Okay, so good evening everybody. For those of you who are joining in, welcome, and hopefully you will enjoy this evening. Tonight I've got something quite cool that I'm going to show you. I'm actually going to have a bit of fun tonight. I'm going to be quite jealous and quite selfish, sorry, and do something that I'm really into at the moment. I'm going to be doing something quite great. I've got a beautiful colour by Madeline, okay? I'm going to crack straight on with my haircut. I've got a side parting, which goes from the crown to the top of the ridge of the head, and then down to the recession area. In fact, I'm going to come slightly wider. So I'm actually going to go to the corner of the recession now. I've got this amazing colour by Maddie, and if you go onto the Makeover Long page when this is finished, you'll see a small video by Maddie describing the colour. Now I'm going to go for something quite graphic on this haircut, but at the same time hopefully something quite beautiful as well. I'm going to start my haircut at this point here. You can see there's a bit of a natural bounce there, can you see that? So I need to be mindful of the choice of length in this area, okay? I'm going to stand on this side so it's easy for you to film. So please, we're going to be careful with the microphone tonight so that we don't get any silent areas. If there is any accidents, please communicate and Michelle will be conscious of the microphone. We're going to be doing a round shape through this area first, okay? I'm going to go a reasonable length. I'm going to go at least 2 inches in length, and I'm going to cut a round cutting line, okay? I'm going to basically place the hair, pull the hair out from the base with a round cutting line. I'm going to place the head down. You can see there's a slight jump there, but nothing too scary because I've managed that length, okay? My sectioning pattern is going to start off by pivoting in this area like this. Okay, I'm going to come section 1 to section 2, pull section 2 straight out from the base and follow section 1 as a guide. Okay, and I'm going to continue that motion. So I'm literally working on the base. Now, section 1, 2 and 3 are coming across. Section 3 is coming straight out. What you're going to find is section 1 will naturally fall away because obviously it won't reach the point in which section 3 is coming out from the base. So please feel free tonight to share this if you'd like your friends to see it. It's going to be quite a creative look, but it's going to be a creative look with, you know, a classic-y feeling to it. I've got a beautiful young lady, literally sat down today with me and said, you know, I was like, you know, what are you up for today? Are you up for something different? And she was like, yeah, you know, I've had my hair quite long for a while, I'm a bit bored. What kind of thing are you thinking? I was like, leave it to me. Leave it to me. So today I'm having a bit of fun. I'm going to cut inside my shape, so let me show you. Stand still and I'll show you. I'll move to you. So my zone is going to come inside the shape, okay? It's going to be a curved zone, and I'm really grooming the excess hair. Michelle is going to be asking me any questions you might have tonight, and the other Michelle is filming tonight. So please, if you do have any questions, I want you to ask. Tonight I'm going to be talking a lot of theory, and I'm going to be sharing a lot of things with you, okay? So I'm going to continue working my shape. This is now section number 4, okay? Section number 4 is again out from the base. And we're going to go for a round cutting line. And every time, if you look carefully, I'm basically grooming the hair down so the root starts to calm down, because obviously when you cut long hair off short, the hair tends to react. So the root tends to react because it's had all this weight controlling it. All of a sudden it's like setting it free. So it wants to move and it wants to kick. Make sure you don't miss your guide like I just did. Make sure you really connect that through. Okay, and every time you comb the hair down and you encourage the hair to start to sit down. The reason why you do that is because the root is letting off heat, the head is letting off heat. So if you leave the root sticking up without grooming it into place, what will happen is that the root will dry sticking up. Then you've got to re-wet it down again, and then you have loads of problems later on. So I'm going to continue with this motion, okay? Now as I'm working through, what you're going to see is we've got a little bit of dry scalp, so the colour is staying in the dry scalp, but we haven't really aggressively taking the dry scalp off because the scalp's a little bit sore from the bleach. So you're going to see small little tiny patches of blue bits on the scalp where basically the dry skin is just holding on to that colour.
Johnny, there's a question.
Okay, who's it from first of all?
The question's from Kalpesh.
Hi Kalpesh, how you doing, buddy?
And it says, what is your number system for this zone you're cutting?
Good, so this, first of all, thank you for the question. This number system is 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and so forth, okay? And what I'm doing is I'm working inside my shape. And what you're going to see now, I'm going to start to get to the point where I'm going to hit the corner of the recession. So this last section is basically here, okay? And this is the point where the hairline starts to drop. Can you see? So that's the point where I'm going to change my technique.
There's another question from Patricia.
Hey Patricia.
And she asks, how do you know which length you want section 1?
Good question. What a great question. In fact, do you know what I'll do? I'll show you and explain that to you, because that's actually a really, really important factor that people struggle with. Choice of length, I've said it before, I'll keep saying it. Choice of length is the key to a haircut working by itself, okay? If you get the wrong choice of length, the haircut then needs to be manipulated into shape. But if you choose the right choice of length, the hair will naturally sit and the structure will do all the work for you. Now that I've basically cut that first zone, I'm going to use some Day-Day, which is my cutting lotion. And I'm going to wet the hair down. Oh, I'm going to wet the hair down. And I'm going to comb the hair into position like this. Okay? And what will happen now is the hair will start to calm itself down and start to sit. Now the reason why I've chosen that length is because I get this kind of soft, fringy area, okay, which just softens the forehead a little bit. Now, choice of length. Let me quickly show you. Come over here with me. Okay. Let me explain to you how choice of length works, okay? Perfect. Over here, Michelle. Oops. Do that again.
It's tough on the whiteboard.
So we're discussing choice of length now, okay? Now watch carefully. I want you to imagine that this is a piece of hair that's coming out the head like that. So if you look carefully, if I cut it here, at this choice of length, the end of the hair will start to flick out. Can you see that? If I cut it here, this choice of length, the end of the hair will flick out. So if you want the shape to sit inwards, that would be the wrong length. If you want the hair to sit inwards, this would be the perfect length, because the hair would hug at that point. If I was to cut it here, this hair would, because it's got no weight to it, it'd stand straight out from the head out here. So you need to understand this choice, because this choice will dictate how the hair sits. If I want the hair to have a kind of soft, beachy, wavy length, then maybe I'll choose this length, or maybe I'll choose this length. Or if I want the hair to kind of have a bend but then flick inwards, I'll choose this length. So it's all relative to what it is you're trying to create. I hope that helps you understand a little bit about choice of length. Okay, back to my hair, because I've got a lot of work to do tonight. I'm now going to move on to the inside of my shape, okay? I'm going to take a curved section that's going to go all the way through the center of the haircut, okay? I'm going to go from here, I'm going to come round. I'm going to comb this hair down.
We have a lot of questions coming in.
Perfect. Let me tell you what I'm going to do,
Yeah.
and then you can ask me as many questions as you want. I just want to get through some of the shape, because there's a lot of hair that I'm going to be working on tonight, and this is going to be a massive change. As you can see, I've got really long hair to work on, and it's going to be a short haircut by the time I finish it. I've got this amazing colour by Madeline. Some of you might be thinking, why are you going to cut all that colour out? But we wanted to do something which was quite dramatic for everybody to see tonight. So you can see my zone now. This is my second zone. I'm coming inside the haircut, okay, and I'm going to come through to the centre back, right? I'm going to come from this point here. I'm going to comb the hair down. Now this bit's going to be the interesting bit. It's going to... So, I'm going to comb that section into my section. I'm going to comb the hair out from the base. Now, Michelle, if you come behind me, babe. Right, can you see my guide, which is underneath there? Can you see that? Okay, I'm going to cut up to the point of my guide, and then from that point, I'm not going to cut any of the rest of the haircut. So I'm combing from the back, and the reason why I'm combing from the back is it means my number system, obviously, is moving back on itself. The hair's quite long, so let me make it a bit easier for myself. Comb that section backwards, comb out from the base. Cut it first time. Let this hair drop away, okay? So I'm not going to cut that hair there. And I'm going to continue doing that the whole way through, so I end up with a small channel of short hair, okay? What's the question, Michelle?
Okay, so there was one question from Shahid.
Okay, hello, welcome.
And they were asking, when will you be in Toronto next?
It's a great question. I've got a couple of things that we're doing. We're definitely going to be in Toronto, I believe the next time will be June, I think it is. And then in November we'll be in Toronto. But we are doing a few dates. We're going to be releasing a few dates where we're going to be in New York, doing some education in New York. And we're also going to be doing some education in Vancouver. We've got a date for primary shapes in Vancouver. If you are interested in doing any of our courses internationally, we're going to be doing quite a few stuff in America. Come behind me, babe, just film behind me so you can see my guide. We're going to be doing quite a lot of stuff in America and quite a lot of stuff in Canada, potentially Vancouver and Toronto. So if you do want to be part of these courses and you want to be considered for the courses, please email us on info@loneducation.com, and what we will do when we have the set dates and the set costings and so forth, we will email you and message you, and then if you want to take a slot, you can.
So we have another question from Adam.
Hi Adam.
He said, what's the best body position for this haircut?
Okay, so if you watch me, Adam, if you look at my body, I'm basically constantly standing behind the shape, okay? And the reason why I'm standing behind the shape, there's a very obvious reason, because by standing behind the shape like this, I'm able to actually look at the root of the hair that I'm cutting, okay? And the reason why I want to look at the root of the hair that I'm cutting is it allows me to check my over direction so that I know I'm working on the base and I'm not over directing the hair either forwards or backwards, okay? I'm combing that hair down. I take the sections with the wide end of the comb and I comb through with the tight end of the comb. Now if you look carefully, you've got to work super clean, that way you can see exactly the zone that I'm working on, okay? Now, one more thing, Michelle, sorry. Another thing that we need to be mindful of, I need to be mindful of in this scenario, is the scalp. We've got, you obviously can't feel it, but I've pre-assessed the scalp, and there's a very strong mastoid process area where there's quite a lot of indentations. So I do need to be really careful of the length that I choose around the mastoid process area. So when I come back through my haircut, I need to really bear that in mind, how this bone here sits. Yes, Michelle?
Andreas asked, why did you prioritize your internal shape on the fringe?
Good point, good question, Andrea. Right, so in the fringe, the idea is that I've got a focal point of length that works around my shape, okay? That focal point of length, I've decided to start in the fringe area, so that way the fringe or the shorter area starts consistently moving around the internal of the shape. If I start at the back, I could start from the back and work around, but it's more tricky working around from back to the front. Whereas if I start this way around, I'm working into my length rather than away from my length. So you can see now I've got a shorter area of hair running through my shape. I don't know if you can see how clearly you can see that on the camera. Hopefully the light is good.
So we have another question about your number system.
Okay.
And this is from Connor.
Hey Connor.
It was a little while ago, so it might be regarding the fringe, but okay. I'm sure you can answer for the whole thing. He asked, can you explain why you're using that number system as opposed to bringing each section back to the previous? Okay,
so basically, by using the number system I'm using, which is basically 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, and so forth, the reason why you create that number system is because it gives you a round shape because you're working on the base. So section 1 is your initial guide. Section 1 moves to section 2. Section 2 comes out from the base. Okay? Section 2 moves to section 3. Section 3 comes out from the base. So by working this kind of idea, in theory what's happening is this number system is allowing the hair that you're introducing to come straight out from its base. Okay? Because your guide is moving where the hair you're actually cutting is not moving, it's coming straight out from its base. That's why we're using that particular number system. If we were to use a number system to the previous, who was it that asked the question, sorry?
This one was from Connor.
From Connor. If I was to use the number system that you mentioned, Connor, which is basically to the previous, what's going to happen, it means instead of it being round, it's actually going to be triangular, because what you're going to find is the hair will increase in length as you add sections in. So 1 will be your guide. If 2 went to 1, then 2 would naturally be longer than 1, because 2 has to travel to 1. So 2 would be longer. And if you continue that number system, basically you'd create a triangular shape. You'd create a shape that gets longer and longer with every section. I hope that answers your question, Connor.
So Lee asked, a lot of questions today, Richard.
I love that. I love that.
What kind of tension are you applying with this cut?
Good. Great question. So now we've discussed number systems. Now we're discussing tension. It's actually the perfect timing for that question, actually. I'll explain to you why. I'm in a situation, shall I go off there, babe? I'm in a situation that where basically I need to, in effect, choose whether I cut my external shape in now or whether I cut my internal shape around the exterior shape. So let me show you. Now, shall I come back over here, babe? Okay, so I could come in now and start my graduation straight away and then put a line into it, or I can put a line into it and then graduate it. Now in this scenario, head down for me, thank you. I'm going to come from here, straight down the centre. Groom all this excess hair. So this is really important. I say this all the time, and it's something which, for me, is fundamental when you're working. The hair that you're not cutting is just as important, it's just as clean as the hair that you are cutting, because at the end of the day, you need to make sure that you're working mechanically, methodically. You need to make sure you look good when you cut hair as well, because there's always, you know, an assistant or someone watching you. Okay? So now I'm going to come in the back. I'm going to use a tiny bit of Day again. And I'm going to use it on the hairline. So, the question was about tension. So let me show you how this works. If I take my section, you can zoom in, Michelle. Look at the skin. Can you see how flexible that skin is? Now, when I cut this shape, if basically I use too much tension in this area, or inconsistent tension, I'm going to basically get loads of steps in my shape. What I want to do is I don't want to put too much tension on the haircut, or if I do put tension, I need to make sure, more importantly, that it's consistent. So, Michelle, if you could move your hand a little bit for me. Okay, I'm going to tilt the head down, I'm going to comb all the hair, and I'm going to comb it once, so a diagonal section. Work super clean, guys, really important, okay? You can see my short layering, how it's moving on top. Diagonal section. Now I'm going to comb the hair out, and now I'm going to choose an actual longer length than I need. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because the hair's got a bit of a jump there. So I'm actually going a bit longer than what I need it to be, because I'm going to actually cut the length off after on the exterior shape. But you can see I've managed to catch the bend. That's really, really, really important. This bend will be the difference between the haircut working and the haircut breakdancing on me. So I'm taking diagonal sections, okay, working through my shape, and I'm combing. My number system now is everything to the previous. So going back to Carl's question, I want to increase my length now. So now, Carl, I'm basically going to work 2 to 1, 3 to 2, and so forth. I'm going to comb it once, look at my guide, and I'm using a consistent amount of tension. Now, when I cut hair, I do tend to use a lot of tension in my fingers, in general. But because I'm quite consistent with it, I never really have any problems with like the skin as such. If I do see I've got a really, really, really intense skin that has a lot of stretch to it, I will in effect relax my tension. Don't forget, there's different types of tension, okay? There's tension in regards to the securing of the hair, the holding of the hair, and there's tension in regards to the pulling of the skin, okay? If I know that I've got a really unusual, excessive elasticity of the skin, then what I will do is I'll use a lot of tension to secure the hair, but very, very little tension to pull the hair. I hope that answers your question.
Patricia has a question.
Hey, Patricia.
And this was regarding the top layering. Why don't you divide the sections lower hair and high hair?
Great question. I want it to be one fluid shape. So when I cut hair, I try to avoid using section clips. I try to work clean and methodical, using grooming as my discipline. I don't want to create a mechanically disconnected shape that's so obvious. I want it to connect at some point. So by working this way, you'll see in a minute, once I've cut this shape here, my horizontal shape in this scenario will be round into triangular. Then I'm going to cut my exterior shape. Then I'm actually going to use my length here to connect it. But you'll see what I mean. It's going to be one of them haircuts where I'm going to be jumping back and forward, and it will make more and more sense as the shape evolves, because the haircut will constantly evolve and change dynamics. So keep the scalp grooming, keep it super clean. You can use the ear to help you, okay? Now can you see how, because I've got all this shorter hair, it's breakdancing, kicking all of this. So you really, really, really need to groom the hair properly, okay? And again, comb the hair once, cut it once, and then move on.
Kimberly has a question as well.
Hey Kimberly, welcome.
Do your cutting lines mimic your sectioning angles?
Yes. So a lot of the time, especially if you're working quite classically, you would tend to use sections that mirror your cutting line. So the reason why we use specific sectioning is because sectioning doesn't help you create the shape. Sorry, it doesn't create the shape. It helps you have a greater control over your shape. So in this scenario, my sections are diagonal, but if you look carefully, I'm working and I'm moving and shifting my body so that my shape is round into triangle. So my sectioning is being mirrored by my cutting line, okay? So again, every section pull into the previous, okay? Now another thing you've got to watch out for when you're doing this kind of shape is you've got to look out for the skin. Not just your tension, you're also looking for example, how high or how low you are pulling the hair. In other words, you're assessing your elevation as well as your over direction. So I'm going to take sections that run all the way through to the front, and I'm going to comb the hair back using the underneath as the guide. Now I'm not too worried about all this hair because I'm going to cut all this hair off in a minute. So I've worked to the top of the ear, okay? Now what I'm going to do, now I've got an area of graduation in the shape, I'm going to come down from the centre using the layered shape on top as a guide, okay? And I'm going to keep and maintain an element of length on the exterior shape, and I'm going to connect it through like this, okay? And what that's going to do is going to soften that shape, and now I'm going to pull everything, I'll direct all of this hair to here. So what's going to happen is it's going to regraduate itself this way. So I'm basically creating two areas of graduation. One to control the weight on the exterior shape, and now I'm using a triangular cutting line to distribute the weight internally slightly different. So one gave me control over my external shape. Now this one is allowing the zone, the first zone, to connect through, but then to disconnect itself behind the ear due to the over direction and elevation that I'm using. I hope this is making sense. I'll try and word it as best as I can for it to make sense. For those of you who've never done primary shapes before, one of the most important aspects of Long is our language that we're using when we cut hair and when we talk about shape. And in this scenario, I'm using elevation, I'm using over direction, and I'm using a cutting line, all in the same time to create my shape. So what you can see now is I've still got my weight there. I've now got a shape that runs itself through. And now I'm going to start to put an outline into it. So, okay. I'm going to comb the hair down. Now when you're working, work quite roughly initially, because once it's dry, I'm going to put loads and loads of effort into controlling it. Now look carefully. Can you see the hair's got a little bit of a jump, okay? That's because of the movement underneath. Can you see the hairline? So what I'm going to do, can you see the bend in the hair now? I'm going to basically cut off the bend in the hair. So I'm maintaining the weight that I've cut from my graduation. I'm also maintaining I'm allowing the layering to flow out into obviously slightly more of a heavier shape. Okay? I could do it when it's dry actually. I could cut it when it's dry. I'll probably have more control when it's dry, but I'm not going to because I like to make my life more interesting. So I'm going to cut the outline and I'm going to cut around and comb it once and just cut it. Don't overanalyze. You can always edit and adapt once the hair is dry. Work your line into the shape. And I'll show you a little trick later on here. So can you see here the hair wants to jump there at that point? Okay, what you do, watch, you take the hair away like that and you soften the density in that area. So in effect, you're cutting away a lot of the length underneath. Okay, and then what you do is you comb it through. That thins it out a little bit. That takes away some of the density that lifts the hair. Can you see now it sits a bit flatter? Okay, and then what you do is you can also come into the hair and get rid of a lot of the movement. And that will again encourage the hair to sit a bit flatter and give you a bit more control. Okay, let me tilt the head up now to the side. Okay. So through the side area, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, again, very roughly, I'm not spending too much time because I know I'm going to spend loads of time once this is dried. I'm going to comb the hair up, comb the hair through, sorry, no tension over the ear, and I'm going to cut a curved line. I'm going to go all the way through with this curved line.
We have a question from Marina.
Hey Marina.
And she said, Johnny, why is your preference to cut from long to short when you were doing graduation?
Sorry, I didn't understand. Ask me the question again.
So why is your preference to cut from long to short when you were doing graduation?
Why was my preference for cutting long to short? In this area here, this was basically where I was connecting my round layer, but I wanted to maintain weight here. So if you think about it, Marina, At this point, it's basically round layering into triangular, more of a triangular shape, maintaining length and weight in my exterior shape. And I've over directed it, so that way what happens is the shape becomes triangular that way, so I'm maintaining weight. And then my initial graduation allowed me to maintain an element of weight in my outline. So what I'm basically doing is I'm combining two shapes in one small tiny zone. Yeah? So one shape is doing one job, the other shape is doing the other job. And what's going to happen is now you can see, as I manipulate the hair, I'm starting to get this really nice beautiful curve, and the layering is starting to kind of blend itself in. Again, don't worry too much about this, because once this is dry, I'm going to spend loads of time making sure this works really nicely. Just get the basic shape in. Do not cut that off, because that bit there is my security blanket for my ear, and when it's dry I can work on that. I might even become a bit more creative when it's dry, but we'll see. Just for now, I'm getting a basic shape in. Alright, turn around, use your mirror, look at your shape, okay, and forget about it for now. Once that's blow dried, I'm going to check all that in. I might even do something quite interesting around the ear, we'll see. And then I'm going to have some fun with the fringe after. I might keep it quite soft, or I might decide to do it quite graphic and quite short. We'll see how the haircut evolves. Right, so I've got all this length now. The good thing about my model, she's got a really beautiful little kind of pixie face. And I think this haircut will make her look quite cool. It will make her look a bit more funky. Alright, so...
before you continue, Elio just wanted to recap. Elio?
Okay, hi Elio.
He wants you to recap the haircut, so I thought maybe that'd be a good time right now.
Perfect timing, right. So from the beginning, this is what I've done so far, okay? I started by basically taking sections that pivoted slightly with a round cutting line working on the base, so 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. At this point here, when I kept working on the base to the point where my recession kicked in, then I continued working, but what I did, if I lift the hair up, you'll see very easily, I completely disconnected the shape. Yeah? So I completely disconnected the shape from around there into basically a complete area of disconnection of length. Okay? Then what I did is I've put a line into that at the end of that. I've worked on the base all the way around with a round cutting line. When I've got to this area in the centre back, so if you come round here, Michelle. Michelle, do me a favour, stay around here if you can because of the reception. When I've got to this area here, I stopped, so my layering basically stopped at this point. Then I came down the centre, took diagonal sections, elevated it, chose a length which had a bend to it, and then basically worked through diagonal sections, working round into triangular. And I only worked up to the top of the ear. I didn't continue through to this point. There was no point because it's not going to connect. Then I came down vertically through the back, used my internal round layer, and basically continued that line through to a triangular cutting line. That way I'm maintaining weight, but the shape's connecting itself through. Then I pulled everything to number 1, so 2 to 1, 3 to 1, 4 to 1. So in effect, everything I've done in this area has tried to maintain weight behind the ear and build up an element of graduation through the external shape. Then basically what I've done through the underneath, I've pointed into the movement through the back, and then I'm going to get rid of all the neck hair and stuff like that. But I want to put the basic shape in because I'm going to do loads once it's dry, but a lot of work to do. So all this length here, just to make it a bit easier for me, I'm just going to get rid of that. We don't need that. Okay, now we're going to cut this side of the haircut. So what we're going to do, I'm going to come from here, from just above the roundness of the head. I need to be careful in this area because the bones are very predominant. From here I'm going to come round like this. Just my zone's going to curve. Okay, and then I'm going to come up to the corner of the recession where the fringe kicks in. Okay, so that's going to be my zone. Now I'm going to, you can see the hair is slightly dehydrated. The hair basically, initially, when Maddie first started, was, well, obviously you can see it was down here, but it was really quite heavily bleached and it had quite a lot of roots to it. So what Maddie's done She's pre-colored a lot of it. Let me just comb this through. Okay, so that's going to be my zone that I'm working on now. Michelle, if you come behind me, baby, you can see how the zone's going to look. I'm going to tilt the head upwards.
Perfect.
Okay. So that's the point where my shape stopped. If you look up at the ceiling for me, the shape goes curves around the head and then curves up and around this way. Okay? Now what I'm going to do, I'm coming back. I'm going to do some day-day just to rehydrate the hair. Don't be scared to use it yet. You can use as much day-day as you want. It's a great cutting lotion to loosen the shape and to help the scissors, the comb, glide through the hair. No matter how stiff the hair is, you can see it just helps it glide through. Right, now I'm going to come through this way. And Michelle, if you come on this side again, Bob.
Sorry about that.
Stay on this side of me, yeah? What we're going to do is we're going to come through the back. We're going to take a diagonal section like this. I'm going to basically comb the hair to the natural fall. So I'm not going to use any elevation. I'm just going to cut an exterior line in. Don't worry about how clean that line is, because after, once it's been blow dried, you can go back through it and reshape it and make it really beautiful. Diagonal sections now, okay? See how I use my thumb to push the hair away? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my initial shape on this side as my guide. That's the length of my triangular layer. And I'm going to basically come through the shape and I'm going to work around the cutting line now. Make sure it's clean before you let it go. So my sections are basically going to be diagonal, crossing over my shape. And I'm combing my guide across this way every time. So I'm going to end up going quite tight underneath my shape. You can see now, Michelle, I'm using my round layer from the top. And I'm going around the shape. And I'm slowly working with that. As I add sections, I'm becoming more and more round. So my vertical shape will be round. And my horizontal shape will also be round in this scenario.
Johnny, we have a question from George.
Hey George.
He said, what is your fixed analysis before you start your strategy?
Okay, so basically my fixed analysis in this scenario is that the hair is quite dehydrated. So by cutting a lot of it off, we basically get some fresh hair to work with. Also, I don't know when George joined in, but we've basically got quite a strong, unusual scalp. We've basically got very predominant mastoid area, which basically collapses in and then I'm going to use a slight clip just in this area because it's not, the hair's got a bit of a bend to it. So yeah, the scalp is quite an unusual surface to work on. It's got basically really strong indentations in certain areas, especially where the mastoid process area is. So I'm working on the base. I'm working on the inside of my fingers. I'm combing section 1 of this zone to section 2. Section 2 is coming out from the base. And I'm working all the way, my body's moving around as I introduce the sections.
So he also asked how you got the idea to create that haircut.
I'm actually making it up as I'm going along, George. I know that I want something which is quite cool. I want something that's got this intricate mechanical shape. which is quite hard to execute, but at the same time I do want it to have a feeling of softness to it, which you'll see as I introduce my length from the top and as I work on my exterior shape around the side area. So I'm working on the base as much as I can, and I'm constantly combing it out. I'm combing it once, I'm cutting it once. Now you can see that the hair, I'm sure you can see from where you guys are, the hair is very dense. So by flattening the shape through and by choosing slightly rounder cutting lines, what you're going to find is the hair will hug the head a bit more. And notice whenever I'm combing the hair through, I'm using the wide end of the comb. And also notice that the hair, because of the choice of length that I've chosen, the hair is bending nicely. If I don't choose the right length in this scenario, the hair is just going to react and stand up. So I need enough length for the hair to bend, but at the same time I need enough length for the hair to sit flat to the scalp.
So we have a question from Rick Roberts Salons.
Hi Rick.
And it says, how long does it take you to design a haircut?
I mean, in this scenario, obviously because I'm chatting a lot, I've planned to have about an hour and a half to finish my haircut. But usually I could do this in the salon environment, I could do it in an hour. But I won't be talking, I'll just be boshing. I'll just be combing and cutting. Now I can start to use the ear a lot more, so I can take away my clip.
We have a question from Tonic Hairstyle.
Hey Tonic.
Hi Johnny, how do you decide the curve of the sections and the placement in regards to the head shape?
Okay, so I know where I want the weight lines to be. I know that in this scenario we're going for a rounder, flatter shape. So there isn't necessarily any corners that I'm building. I'm trying to flatten all the corners out. But at the same time, the difficult area was transitioning from my triangular layer initially, and then slowly pivoting into more of a rounder shape. Yeah? So initially, you have to obviously think about whether or not you're going to build a corner or not. In my scenario, I'm not going to build a corner. I want it to hug the head, okay? And I'm working all the way up to the top of the ear. You can see now that I'm using the ear area as a guide to secure the hair. My shape's becoming cleaner and cleaner as I'm working up and round. So keep looking at the guide. I'm looking at the root of the hair. Now the reason why we encourage people to look at the root of the hair over and over and over again is because the root will show you your elevation, your over direction, and it will also identify if your tension is inconsistent. Okay.
So T Rose has a question.
Okay.
How do you know when you go to the hairdressers if the person cutting your hair is experienced?
I think the consultation plays a big part. I definitely think the consultation is a big part. The best advice I would give is if I have to tell the hairdresser, what I wanted, for me that would worry me. I would want the hairdresser to suggest to me what I should have. I'd want the hairdresser to basically turn around and say, you know what, I've noticed, I love this and I love that. I mean, to be fair, I don't have a lot of hair, so the person would be a bit difficult to suggest to me, but if I was a young lady and I wanted to have a haircut, I'd go to somebody who would advise me rather than wait for me to suggest what I think. Right, I'm going to use this fringe length as my guide, okay? And I'm going to take diagonal section. The reason my section is diagonal is because basically I'm mirroring the hairline, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this length as my guide. I'm going to comb the hair out from the base. You can see my length there in the corner of my hand. And I'm going to work a round cutting line coming down into the side. And I'm keeping it at a decent length for it to have a bend to it. Can you see? The hair's bending by itself. If I went shorter than that, what will happen is it will start to go spiky on me. So my sections are going to slowly go from diagonal into vertical, okay? I'm going to keep combing, grooming the excess hair. Tilt the head down, that way my back stays straight. And then again, section 1 is going to section 2. Comb the hair out from the base. and I'm going to work a round cutting line. So now I'm starting to work inside this area of this connection. So make sure this is groomed really well. That way you're not disturbing that hair at all. You never want to pick up any of that hair. Okay? And every time I cut it, what do? I comb it into position because I want the hair to start to kind of calm itself down. Where I'm cutting it from long to short, the hair is going to react. Okay? So I'm going to add a bit of speed now so I can get through this zone. I'm going to work sections which are basically going from diagonal. They're slowly going to become vertical. Then they're going to work from here. Then they're going to pivot round into this area of layering through here.
We have a question from Sue.
Hi, Sue.
She said, hi, I have purple in my hair, but it doesn't last. Any recommendations?
Ooh, what a great question that I am not going to be able to answer because I am not the best colorist on the planet, but we do have one of the best colorists on the planet who works with us. So hopefully at some point, what I will do is I will ask Madeline to write a little message on the Alon Unplugged. At some point, I'll get her to look through, and I'm going to drop my comb because I really don't want that comb. I want a new comb. I'm going to get a new comb. That's the danger of the live, guys. But don't worry, because we've got backup. Okay, so yeah, I'll get someone to answer that. I do know, for example, what you could do. There is an idea that we were working on a while ago, and this might help you. If you use Davos products, what you could do is you could use the White Love conditioner. They come in like a small square tub, and what you could do is you could mix up, because it's white, you could mix up some of your toners that you would normally use to tone the hair that purple that you wanted. By the way, before I carry on, can you see the length that I've chosen here? I'm going to use that length to connect into the length that I've chosen in the front. Remember, you're combing 1 to 2, 2 to 3, so make sure you comb from the back. Can you see that? That's my connection point. Everyone see that? Hopefully they can. Yeah, so what you do is you can put some of your toner into the conditioner, and then every time you use the conditioner you could leave it in for what, 10-15 minutes, and obviously it will intensify and kind of replenish your colour. That's one way of doing it. That's how I would suggest it, but I'm sure Madeline will have a much more of a professional colour way of explaining what you would do. I'm not going to try and make it up.
We have a lot of questions coming in.
Fantastic.
Good.
Hit me with it.
So, Koyhan, I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. How do you inform your clients you will be increasing your prices before or after the service?
What a great question. Okay, so this is a question for the ages. A lot of hairdressers find it hard to increase their prices because they sometimes don't always value themselves as much as they should. So I'm glad that he's considering doing something like that. How I would do it is quite simple. If you don't want to upset your customer base, let's say for example, it depends obviously how much you're raising it, but let's just say if you're raising it $1 or $2 or pounds or whatever the currency is where you're from, I wouldn't say that's like a massive shock to customers. So all you need to do really is just put a little notice on reception, make sure your stylists are communicating it before the service, and make sure that when the receptionist or the front of house is booking the service in the first place, they can mention it over the phone. That way the client has a choice to make prior booking the appointment. That's one way of doing it. You could do a mail out if you had a mailing list. If you were increasing your prices quite dramatically, let's say $10 to $15 or more, what I would do, let's say for example, I mean even $10 is not really that much, but let's say you were raising it on $30 or £30 or whatever. What I would do is I would do this. I would communicate to all my regular customers, all my customers who I know are loyal to the brand, to the company. What I would say to them is, listen, we've got your details on computer. What we're going to do for the next 2 months or 3 months or 4 months or whatever you think is a fair time frame, we're going to be keeping your prices the same because you've been so loyal to us and obviously you've been coming here for a long time. But after the 4 month or 5 month period, the price will go up to X amount. But any new customers that are coming into the business, they'll basically pay what it is that your new price bracket is. So what happens is you start to build a new customer base at a different price bracket. So after 4 to 5 or 6 months, if some of the clients decide not to stay with you, obviously you've built up new client bases at a higher rate, or they'll obviously drop to somebody else in the salon. And then the existing clients feel like they're a lot more valued because obviously they're able to get like a special discounted rate for a period of time to say thank you for their loyalty. So it's a win-win in the end, really, especially for them because they feel like they're getting, you know, looked after for a period, because you don't have to do it. You're doing it just for the sake of making them more comfortable with the change. So I'm connecting it through, and now I'm going to come back around this way, taking vertical sections, combing the hair out from the base. I hope that, who was it that asked that question?
That was Korhan Savazadal.
I hope that answers your question, Korhan. Basically, you need to create a system which allows your regular customers to feel like, or to understand that you appreciate them, but at the same time you do need to move your business forward. So by giving them a time frame of notice, I suppose you could say, it will help them accommodate the change. So now guys, I'm coming back through vertically. I'm just over directing everything back. So now my round layer is going to become slightly more triangular because these are 2 different lengths, okay?
So we have a question from, I apologize if I'm pronouncing it wrong, Charudata.
Okay, hello.
Will there be more of these kind of edgy, long to short, punky haircut live videos? Is more short hair trendy? Thank you.
That's a good question. I'll be honest with you, today I really wanted to cut hair today. I was watching Michelle cutting hair and they've gotten to a stage now where they're doing amazingly well. For those of you who have never met Michelle and Michelle are 2 of 4 people who are potentially training to become salon educators. So they're spending every day, bless them, unfortunately, with me. And we're training them and training them. They've got to a point now where they're more than comfortable to do the standards that we want. So today I'm not even cutting hair with them, I'm literally just critiquing their work. So I've been itching to cut hair today. So when we came in and started talking about ideas, I was like, yeah boy, we got some fun tonight. So that's what we've done. So to answer your question, will there be more? It depends. Last week, I don't know if you tuned in last week, but last week we did it from Palma. We were in Palma, me and Pedro. And we did a long look, and then we did a barbered look, because that was the requests of some of the people that have been logging in every week. For those of you who log in every week, thank you so much for logging in every single week, and thank you so much for following the Salon Unplugged. And I genuinely hope that you enjoy what you see, and please, if you can, share it. The more people that share it, the bigger the audience becomes and the more fun we end up having. You can see the interaction is growing and growing week on, week out. So on the bottom side of your screen, on the left side, it has the word share. If you want to share it, that would be amazing, because then we can have more and more people tune in and ask questions. So next week, I'm going to be in the country. I'm going to be in London, so we'll have something else next week. I'd like to maybe do a gent next week, because it's been a while since I've done a gent. And then we're going to be in the Philippines, so we'll do it from the Philippines. It'll be a slightly different time frame. Now, I'm not worried about the fluidity of this line just yet, because it's moving, it's jumping and moving. So I'm going to blow dry this, and then I'll make this like glass, you know? I'll make it sit like glass. But the lengths that I've chosen are all sitting nicely, they're all bending nicely. The shape is starting to mould itself. I might keep this soft. I'll see what happens once it's dry. Or I might carve all that away. Not quite sure yet.
And Johnny, Krista has a question.
Krista? Okay?
Yeah, she asked, what is the best style for a round face?
What a great question. So, who said that? Krista?
Krista.
Okay,
Krista B.
perfect.
Bartlett.
So Krista, when you talk about suitability, what you have to think about is taste. Everyone's taste is different. There are some generic rules that people have. So you do try to kind of do the counter opposites. If someone's got, say, a round face, you wouldn't necessarily put like a round line on it, because that can sometimes make the whole thing look a bit bubbly. If someone's got a really chiseled face, obviously the more oval the face, the more symmetrical the face tends to look, so you can get away with a lot more stuff. With faces that are slightly more pointy towards the chin, what you want to try and do is give the haircut width so that it reproportions the face. Try and think about countering whatever's happening. So if you've got a really square, sharp shape, you want to soften it. So by putting more of a softer finish on it, that's obviously not nicer. I would say to you, there is some generic rules which you do learn on the primary shapes course, but my advice to you is try not to think of it as I have to do this or I have to do that. Think of it more as in what is the best thing for this person that I'm cutting. Okay, so in this scenario now, guys, I'm going to basically work on my top zone of this connection. I'm going across the top of the head. Okay, I'm choosing a length that's going to have a nice kind of fold to it. So I'm going quite long, okay, and I'm going to use a square cutting line. Okay, now my disconnected zone will give me the shape that I want to create, simply because of the fact of how unusual it is. It's offset, so I want the hair to be able to wrap each way. So I'm taking a section from left to right, slightly too wide, okay, combing the excess hair through, comb this hair up, and then what you're going to find is I'm going to comb section 1 onto section 2, and section 2 is going to come slightly back. So now I'm basically pulling to the previous, okay? You comb the hair once. Look at the tension at the root. Can you see I've got quite a lot of tension in there? I'm not worried about the skin so much in this area. Yeah, my tension's really firm because the skin is a lot less elasticated through the top. Okay, so everything's going to be coming to the previous. So I am going to be getting slightly longer as I work forward, but I'm not pulling everything straight back because I don't want to keep loads of length. I want it to have like this kind of bobby type feeling in the front. Again, just to the previous. So now, section 1, even though I'm combing section 1 and 2 into my hands, section 1 is not coming necessarily near the guide as such. It's sitting inside my fingers. It's sitting basically inside this point. So now only section 2 really is into play. Okay, and section 3 is going to section 2. Okay? Now that I start to move more forward, I'm going to start to take section 1 away and section 2 away, and now I'm only going to use section 3 in my hand. Okay?
Johnny Elio has a question.
Okay?
Can you buy the combs directly from your site?
Yes, so if you go on to www.aliloneducation.com, you could basically buy it online. We're going to be having an online shop soon, so at the moment we're doing it through email. So if you email info@aliloneducation.com, so info@aliloneducation.com, you'll be able to place your order that way. Within the next couple of months we'll be having the actual online shop going on, so you can buy it directly. But for now we're doing it via the bank transfers and so forth. But if you go onto the website, you can actually see the comb before you buy it. You can really understand what it is that you're purchasing. I personally, out of all the combs, I love the Sessibon. It's just my favourite cutting comb. The Bueys I love too, but my favourite out of all of them is the one I'm using now, the Sessibon.
So Lindsay has a question. Advice on growing out shaved sides with long hair.
Okay, so ideally the best advice is don't touch it, just let it grow. But what you could do is make sure you maintain the length around it to disguise it while it grows, because what you're going to find is going to go through loads of transition periods. You could just basically trim it up constantly, and then by putting an outline into it, that's a good way of disguising it while it grows. So by keep the internal shape growing, but just keep reshaping the outline of it so it looks clean, while the weight tends to grow. Then slowly grow it over the year. I'm assuming it's kind of up through the sides. That's quite a big trend at the moment, isn't it? People having the sides shaved and keeping the back long. We've got a beautiful haircut that Michelle cut on this young lady behind us in the corner. Basically it was an undercut through the sides prior, so all Michelle did was just dust it off. So all I'm doing now, guys, my number system is to the previous, and what this will do, it will increase in length slightly, but I'll be able to maintain some length that falls over the fringe.
Joanne has a question.
Hey Joanne.
Could this cut work with very fine, naturally curly hair?
Ooh, good question. Naturally fine curly hair. I would say yeah, as long as you're choosing the right lengths. So of course it's possible, but it's dangerous because with curly hair, the bend is a lot more predominant. So if you don't choose the right length on the bend, you could be in a world of trouble. So the answer is yes, but it's also making sure that you're choosing the right length for what you need.
And Krista has a question. It's a color question.
Okay.
She said, I have natural red hair. What would a good color to change it to without being too unnatural?
You have what color, sorry? Naturally red?
She has red, yes.
So yeah, I could take a pop at this, but I don't want to get it wrong. This is what I'm going to do. If you could post a picture of your hair on as a message, take a photo of your hair, post it, and then what I'll do is I'll get Mads or one of the colour team to have a little look, and they'll write a little comment of what potentially you could do on the colour. That'd be a good way of doing it. Rather than me trying to, I don't want to give you the wrong advice. I'm not a pro when it comes to colour.
Ola has a question about your cut.
Who does?
Ola.
Okay.
So on your left hand side, it's disconnected, and on your right hand side, it's a round cutting all the way through. She joined a bit late.
Okay. So basically, my shape has a combination of different shapes. If you keep watching, at the end, I'll go through the whole haircut for you. Let me just get some Love Smooth. And I'm going to use a little bit of white oil. And I'm going to use a bit of milk. So, I'm going to use some oil milk. Was the reception okay?
Yeah, it's perfect. Yep.
Yeah. I'm going to use some oil, some Love Smooth, and some oil milk. I'm using the oil milk first. I'm just going to distribute that. I'm going to do a really beautiful blow dry. And then I'm going to spend a long time really personalising all the ends of the hair and making it really sharp and beautiful to look at. So I'm using a nice amount of Love Smooth. Okay. Rub that in the front and back of your hands. I tend to use this quite a lot, this particular product, because I love the way it hydrates the hair. It gives a really, really nice moisture to the hair, especially if the hair is bleached, for example, like this hair here. I really work it into the hairlines because the hairlines are going to need work. Work it into the hair, rub it in really well. Really circulate that product. Really get it into your fringe. I'm actually using the product a little bit on the root as well, so when I blow dry it, I'm rehydrating the root slightly. Don't worry too much about the ends, because I'm going to blow dry the ends with a bit of oil at the end. So I'm going to use a couple of pumps of oil.
We have a question from Danny.
Hey Danny.
And he said, Johnny, can you hint a bit what to expect at a Hair on Stage in Amsterdam this October?
Oh. Can I hint a bit? I could do. Don't know if I want to. Could I hint a little bit? Let me think. Let's just say the muse we've chosen for this particular collection is a really, really interesting guy. There you go. That's the first hint. He tends to produce work that has a really cool meaning to it. Obviously, like most people, we we work on, but let's just say it's quite smoky in feeling. I can't give you too much because once I give you, all you're going to have to do is Google a few words and you'll have it. So the answer is no. I'm not going to tell you yet. I'm not going to tell you the surprise because that's part of the beauty of wanting to see an Allen collection and meet our muse and find out what it is that we're passionate about at this particular time. We're actually shooting it on Friday. We're shooting the collection on Friday. So the images and the video and everything hopefully will be ready within the next 2 months. And it'll be ready for October. And or potentially any other trick we're doing beforehand. So I'm using a wrap drying technique. Now, when you're wrap drying, start on the hairline first. Always start on the hairline first. This is the key. So this will be the difference between the hair sitting and the hair not sitting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the nozzle off the hairdryer because I want the air to circulate, okay? But I'll do that in a sec. Okay, so wrap drying. For those of you who have tuned in before and watched the Allen Unplugged, obviously we've discussed the clockwork technique, which basically means you're imagining a clock on the head, 12 o'clock being here, 6 o'clock being here, 3 o'clock being here, 9 o'clock being over there. And what I'm doing is I'm blow drying the hair from 6 o'clock through to 12 o'clock. And then I'm going to blow dry from 12 o'clock back into 6 o'clock. Michelle, come on this side, okay?
I just might not hear you as well.
I'll talk really loudly. If you can't hear me, please just message and Michelle will be able to communicate to me what it is that you're communicating to her. So really focus the airflow, and you can see by blow drying it back, the hair naturally will sit forward for me. Okay? Now don't worry about all that, we're going to check all that in after. Always start at the hairlines. Because the hairline is the support to the internal shape. Always keep the hair dryer facing down, let the airflow do the work. Keep the intense heat. So when I blow dry, I tend to use high heat, high speed, okay? Because for me, the key is to really heat that root up so I can manipulate the shape. Really stretch the hair around the head. Really focus the airflow going down the hair. That way I get a nice smooth finish. Notice that I'm constantly moving the hair dryer. And then while it's hot, I place it into position and let the haircut do the work for me. Okay, now I'm going to play with the fringe. Don't worry about the length area, because the length area we can tension dry. The wrap drying happens on the root of the shorter hair. So blow dry the root of the shorter hair first. So now I'm focused on the fringe area. Make it hot, hair dry facing down, and then brush it into place to set. Focus on the root. The root is the key. The root is the key to the haircut, and it's the key to the blow dry. Whether you want, a big kind of round brush, bouncy blow dry, or flat wrap dry, or you want hair that has a bit of a bend to it. You want to focus on how the root is moving, because the root will dictate how the end sits. Now, on my internal length, which is the length around the crown and my area of disconnection, I'm going to stretch the hair around the head. I need to be sensitive to the scalp because obviously we only had a bleed a couple of about an hour ago. So I need to be sensitive to how I'm wrapping the hair. So I'm letting a lot of the air do the work for me. And I'm basically just wrapping up the hair with a brush on it. Okay, I'm just allowing the hair to circulate nicely. Now Matt then used Nunu as the shampoo and the conditioner. Why? Because it's got loads and loads of moisturising agents, as well as quite a lot of a protein base. So that really helps condition the hair, strengthen the hair, make the hair sit nice and manageable for me. Hopefully you can hear me. Now I'm basically wrapping from 12 back to 6, and I'm really stretching the hair around. Don't do this, don't pull the brush out, wrap it around like this. Now the reason why I'm using a Denman is because a Denman brush will give me a lot of tension. Whereas if I use a ceramic vest brush, which is the brush that I love using, what I will find is that I'll get a bit of volume in the hair. And I don't want to create volume in this particular haircut. Really wrap the hair around and let the airflow do the work and the head shape. Remember, by wrapping the hair around the head, what's happening is the curve of the head is doing a lot of the work for me. Is the feed okay? There's no issues with the feed, Michelle, yeah?
It's a question, but I'm going to wait until after the blow dry.
Okay, okay, no problem.
It's not about the blow dry.
Okay. So look at the hair dryer, I'm constantly moving the hair dryer. I'm constantly heating up the head. I'm really trying to focus on the root. On the short hair, I'm focusing the root. And then once the hair is hot, you position it into place. I'm not so much worried about any kind of looser hair, because in a moment I'm going to tend to dry the length. I'm just trying to get the roots as flat as I can so that it hugs the head. So however I move the hair, I'll have a nice bend to the hair. Again, if you're watching this and you're enjoying it, please feel free to share the video. It's always nice to look at the mirror just to understand how the shape is sitting. And then, when you need to, now for example, focus on the mid-length and ends. Tension dry, and just bevel the ends. This is close to the cuticle of the end. And I'm only doing this on my length. So just circulate the ends. Look at the airflow going down the hair. And I'm bending, manipulating those ends. The underneath hair, I don't really want to elevate too much. So I just manipulate the ends slightly and then brush the hair through straight away. That way I'm guaranteeing my line through the exterior shape. Yeah? Now, when we were talking, me and Madeline, about colour, one of the things that we focused on was the colour of our eyes. We've got beautiful, beautiful blue, kind of baby blue eyes. So we thought we'd play with that, with the blue hair. The blue is the theme right now. Okay, one more time. I'm just going to focus on the ends and then I'm done. Okay, so if you've got any questions you want to ask, feel free to ask Michelle. And I'll be with you in about 2 minutes. Just going to focus on these ends. Really focus your airflow going down the hair, guys. That way the cuticle of the hair will sit nice and smooth. And when you place the hair into position, hold it where you want it to sit. Okay. So now is actually where the haircut starts to really come alive, because all the internal shapes are all cut. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start to actually work on all the exterior shape, as well as the fringe area and the density of my disconnection.
Johnny, we have a question from Megan Louise.
Hey Megan.
And she asks, what are some good hairstyles for curly hair?
Oh, very good question. I love curly hair. I love cutting curly hair. In fact, maybe what we could do maybe next week is we might maybe get a curly one for you guys to see. Before we carry on, I just want to get some opinions. I'll come back to that question. I could leave the fringe quite soft and quite long, or I could crop it down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do both. So I'm going to do both. I'm going to leave some length, but I'm going to crop some areas down so it's quite raw. So for example, in this area, I like the fact that this is kind of separating, it's quite soft, but I don't like how dense this area is. So what I'm going to do is I'm literally just going to take away this little corner here. And let me come on that side, Michelle, so you can see it better. Michelle, do me a favour, come around here because the light's better here.
Okay.
There you go. So comb the hair to the natural fall, and then visually just work your line. Section that away, just carve that away. I still want to keep it quite raw though, because otherwise it might look a bit odd having a really, really sharp, clean line next to a raw fringe. So just cut it neat, but cut it a bit using kind of like a chipping technique. That way the finish of it is quite raw. That way what happens is, can I pull it in a brush? That way if you look in the mirror, it opens up the face just in that area. And I get this kind of little piecey fringy bit next to it, which I quite like. It's quite cool. Okay, now I'm going to start to, I could spend time checking all my internal shape, but I'm not that worried about it. I'm quite confident with that. So I'm going to spend some time, I'm going to iron my lengths, and then I'm going to start working on all my exterior shape, and then the underneath side. So turn the iron on for me, thank you. So come around this side, like that. Now you can see, I'm going to iron the hair not to fix the blow dry, okay? The hair's doing what I need it to do. I'm not worried about how it's sitting. I just want to close all the cuticles, so when I chip that in, that's going to look like glass, okay? So, thank you. So, what were the questions you showed? Oh, curly hair was the question, wasn't it?
Yep.
So, suggest some shapes for curly hair. Okay. Again, talking about the bend of hair, that's the key with curly hair. That's the key with all hair, understanding the bend. With curly hair, you have to obviously understand that the curly hair naturally has this kind of expansion to it. So if you're not conscious of the expansion when it comes to your choice of length, that's when you tend to have a lot of problems. So be mindful of the expansion of the shape, because that affects visually how the shape looks. I personally think with curly hair, I love curly hair to be alive. I love it to be bouncy. I enjoy the fact that it's got that kind of raw movement to it. So I would definitely encourage the hair to sit quite bouncy and quite full. Nice. Good. Okay, so I know I need to stop saying good. The team keep taking the mickey out of me because I keep saying when I'm doing something I always say good, because I'm basically reassuring myself that what I'm doing is working. So I do apologise if I keep saying good. I'm going to try to stop saying that. Okay, I'm going to iron the hair through, and all I'm doing now is I'm just trying to seal the end of the hair. Okay. Good. So with curly hair, think about expansion. Think about the fact that curly hair tends to go quite triangular. when you're cutting it into more of a kind of line type shape. If you're using graduation, again, it tends to look quite triangular. So, me personally, with curly hair, if I'm going to go for a shorter style, then I would definitely encourage the shape to be really big and bouncy, because I think curly hair that has a nice big bounce to it looks quite sexy. If the customer or the client or the model or whatever would prefer the shape to be slightly flatter, then what you would tend to use is you would tend to work with more rounded cutting lines rather than triangular cutting lines, because the rounded cutting lines would basically make the hair hug the head. So again, I'm just closing the cuticles on the ends of the hair. Okay.
Mandy mentioned that she would love to see products and cuts for curly hair, and also working with colors and gray root coverage. She loves the demo and she thanks you.
Believe me, I'm grateful to you for tuning in. This is something that we're quite passionate about, doing these unplugged sessions. And what's interesting, because it's becoming more and more, a lot more people are doing them nowadays, which is really good, in some respects. And it's really important that we all keep sharing with each other. So I'm grateful that you're tuning in, if I'm honest. This is always nice.
Mandy also said she's also interested in best styles for over 50s on trend.
Okay, so this trend conversation, let's have a little chat about this, Mandy, because at Alilon, we try not to focus on what people think is like the cool thing now. What we tend to do is we tend to just look at the model, look at the hair type, think about shape. I mean, if we're talking about collections, then our collections tend to be quite specific, because they're about, I don't know if you've seen any of our collections, but they always tend to be telling somebody's story. So they're quite specific in regards to how we execute the techniques and what it is we do. But trend-wise, I would always suggest to you to forget what people are saying is the cool thing for now, and focus on the person that's sitting in the chair, and really think about what would best suit that face shape. So if someone's got a really round face, but the trend at the moment is kind of bowly type shapes, I mean, you could do it, but I'd suggest not to. So I would focus more on suitability. Why don't we talk about that a bit more, actually, because you did ask before, and I kind of didn't go into too much detail. Let's focus on suitability. Now let's talk about suitability. Now, suitability is always questionable because it's down to opinion. What I think looks good and what you think looks good could be completely different. Some of you watching this might be thinking, wow, that looks incredible, and some of you might be looking at it and she should have kept her hair long. So you've got so many different opinions, and it's okay to have those different opinions. So now, for example, now the hair's dried, I can look at my line and I can see how it's kind of set itself. I'm going to basically really make this a beautiful line, get rid of all my neck hair, make this so sharp it looks like glass. So just secure the hair and then cut it. Okay, get the basic shape in, and now I'm going to use a chipping technique to make my line look really clean. So, suitability. We discussed trying to think opposite. So, for example, if you've got somebody with a square-shaped face, you want to soften it and make it look more feminine. So by putting some kind of softness around it, it just softens the harshness of the jaw, for example. Come on this side for me. So I'm going to gently comb the hair away. Let the hair move where it wants to sit. Would you mind, Michelle, would you mind grabbing me the clipper just so I can speed the process up, babe? Please. Let me get rid of this in there. Get some fresh air. Perfect, thank you. Okay, take your head down for me, darling. And get them, Michelle. So I'm just going to, just for speed, just get rid of the neck hair.
iPad, I saw your comment. Let me know if it's better now.
So you could obviously use a clipper or use a scissor for what I'm doing, just for the interest of time, because I've got a lot of work to do. I'm just using the clipper to take the hair down.
So, Kim has a question.
Okay, can I just quickly, sorry, I just want to finish one.
Yeah,
Kim, give me 1 sec, Bob. I just want to talk about suitability, because it's such an important thing. If you want to focus on people's features, let's say, for example, someone's got beautiful lips, obviously you can place a line next to it, but you may not want to work something too sharp. You may want it to be quite soft. So don't think of it as being, it has to be a hard line for it to highlight a feature. It can be a soft line, but the length needs to be sitting in that area. Okay? Use your mirror, constantly use your mirror to check your shape. Okay, really, really, really important to use your mirror. And you can see the hair wants to bounce for me. So let it do what it wants to do. Don't try and force it where it doesn't want to sit. Use your mirror, Michelle. Have a look over there. So can you see this area here? There's no point me working it now because that's not natural fall. So what I need to do is I need to help the hair, encourage the hair to go to natural fall. So head position goes up, okay? I'm going to tuck the hair behind the ear and I can see all the excess length that I've got, okay? So what I'm going to do in this area is I'm going to basically soften the density in that area. So watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to take diagonal sections like that, okay? I'm going to elevate the hair over the ear and I'm going to really soften this line so there's no strength over the ear. So the shape just breaks over the ear. I'm going to keep the density in front of the ear so the line flows through, but the area over the ear, I'm just going to soften it through completely. So there's zero strength in that line over the ear. Because the ear is quite predominant, the hair will just sit a bit softer in that area. Take this hair away, my disconnection away, and I'm going to focus on the density. Can you see, look underneath there? Can you see my line? That's how it's sitting. So what I'm going to do with the hair that sits on top of that line, where the graduation was, I'm just going to soften just the cutting line. I'm going to go about 1 centimetre into the shape. And what this will happen is, I'm basically making sure that the actual cutting line itself is completely diffused. And it will just blend itself in really nicely to my line. Okay, now comb the hair over the ear. You can see I've diffused that shape completely. I've got this little tad bit here. Make sure the chin is upright. Place the hair down and then gently work your line. You can, if you want, place it in your comb and just tap it into your comb, because obviously this is an awkward area where the jawline is. The hair always likes to dink itself in and hide itself in that area. And then just nip off any excess. And this area here, this is obviously where that movement was before. Can you see? What I'm going to do is I'm going to diffuse this area so it falls a bit softer in that area. And again, I can go underneath the shape and take away a little bit of the density underneath, which will give me a bit more control. Comb the hair through, let the hair move. Let it do what it wants to do. Try not to force it into position. Cut it into position. Let it move, let it react, and then work with it. Don't try and make it do what it doesn't want to do, because you'll never win against a natural movement. You've got to basically allow the hair to do what it needs to do, and then work around it. Sure, can I jump over that mirror?
Right.
Cheers. Okay, so suitability. Don't just think of it as a hard line to highlight an area. Remember that you can do a soft line, and as long as the length is in that specific area, you're going to basically highlight that particular shape. Okay? Don't be scared to soften the line and make it work visually using your mirror. Over the ear, diffuse the shape completely, but keep the weight in front of the ear, that way the line flows through nicely. And then spin the chair around, use your mirror, look how the hair sits. Okay? Make sure the shape flows nicely. move all your disconnections so that way you can see how all this hair is working by itself. I love this kind of multi-tone blue which I'm getting, which Maddie did for me. So now this length on the top, I'm going to diffuse it all, so I'm going to soften it all the way through. Now, when you think about suitability, think about choice of length and placement of length. Think about creating a softer shape on a slightly more chiseled, hard face. Think about creating a more chiseled look on a face which is slightly more rounder. That could be quite nice. There isn't a set rule. Think about what you personally think is nice, because that is, you know, if your eye is enjoying it, the chances are your client's eyes will also enjoy it. So with curly hair, just think of it more as in you're personalising. In other words, you're either building a shape or you're collapsing a shape, depending on what you want to say, what the end result is. If you want the end result to be this kind of big, bouncy, solid, compact shape, then work very mechanically with the curls. Keep the shape very systematic. If you want the curls to be more of a softer, kind of looser type finish, then you can work a lot more with a personalising technique, i.e. could be pointing, could be slicing, could be weave cutting, could be channel cutting, could be twist cutting, could be so many things. So another question, Michelle?
Yeah, so this is from Avani Service Kim.
Hi Kim.
Hi Johnny, what do you suggest when using the ion clips on colored hair? Will that color fade out a bit? I'm assuming they mean the flat iron.
Okay, with the flat iron, it can obviously dull the colour a little bit. To be honest with you, if it's a really good colour line, it shouldn't be that much of an impact. I mean, especially if you imagine when we do stage work, if we were colouring the hair and then as soon as we put the iron on, it ruins the colour, then it wouldn't be a very good colour range that you're working with. So the iron shouldn't really be a massive problem unless it's too hot. So you could change the pressure on the heat on the iron. In our scenario, we use the GHD irons, which basically have this particular one has no multiple settings. So the quicker you move the iron, the less obviously impact it can have. The slower you move the iron, the more heat the hair takes. So a lot of it is also to do with the application of the iron, but it shouldn't really affect the colour too much. It can neutralise the colour. I'm not going to pretend that it can't, because it can. I've seen it happen many times, but depends on how slow you go and how long you spend and how much pressure you place on the hair whilst it's being ironed.
There's a question from Megan Louise.
Hey Megan.
She said she had wild curly hair all her life, but she spent 4 years straightening it as a young teen.
Most people do, unfortunately.
And she said, now in my 20s, is there anything I can do to liven up the flatness at the top of my head?
Yeah, fly to London and I will cut it for you personally. I would love to cut your hair for you. I love cutting curly hair, and the reason why I love cutting curly hair is because basically it's alive, it's constantly moving, and you've almost got to listen to what it's telling you. Sometimes in this scenario where, what was her name, sorry?
That was Megan Louise.
Megan. Sometimes in your scenario, Megan, sometimes you need to just cut it off and start again. That's the reality. So if you're going to cut it off, come see me. I'd love to do that for you. Be a pleasure. I don't know where you're from, but if you want to fly to London, I do clients twice a week, sometimes. I'd love to cut it for you, but the reality is the chances are you probably have to just cut it all off and start again, babe. So look at my shape. When you elevate the hair, can you see how the zone disconnects itself naturally? Yeah? This is how the hair should separate. Yeah? If you don't do that, it means you haven't worked cleanly on your shape. So make sure you work super clean on your shape.
Danny has a question about consultations.
Okay, Danny?
So he said, how do you explain creative cuts to your clients? Do you communicate more in length and textures, or do you explain in this more technical way?
I think sometimes if you want to impress the client, it is nice to hit them with a bit of technical conversation. Ideally, if I'm working creatively with my customer, I like to not put myself in a box. So I would use words like soft, freedom, movement, soft, freedom, movement. I could use the word sexy, because words give people visuals. I wouldn't show pictures as much. I try and avoid showing pictures, because when I work creatively, I like to have freedom. And if I don't have freedom sometimes, or if I have too many restrictions, you have to react, let the hair react and work with what the hair naturally wants to do. So I don't like to put myself in a box when it comes to shapes. If I'm going to do something where it's going to be more solid, more compact, more sharp, more clean, more precise, you know, again, these words give you a visual. Whereas if I say soft, messy, textured, scruffy, they give you a visual. So the words that you use with customers is really, really relevant. I would prefer to use words rather than visuals, and I would prefer to allow myself freedom. So what I tend to do, I tend to say to them, we're going to have areas of the hair where they're quite compact and quite clean and quite sharp, but then there's going to be areas where it's quite soft and floaty and movable. That way, I can do it when I want, because I told them it's going to be a bit of everything, you know. Try and avoid putting yourself in a box. Try and avoid committing yourself. A lot of the times it's about trust. So if the customer trusts you and you're confident in what you're saying and you know what will look good, the chances are the clients will let you kind of do what you want. But if you go a bit meek on your description, so in other words, if you say something like, I might do this, and I'm thinking about doing this, and this could be nice, you know, the chances are it's all about, especially if you're going for a massive change, it's all about confidence. And sometimes you've got to sell what you know will look good, because if you know it will look good and you believe in it, the person will tend to believe in it.
So Mandy has a question about product.
It's okay.
Pardon?
No, I'm just talking to Michelle.
She said that she has a cut very similar to this, but very naturally curly hair and thick. What products would you have advice for when to help with humidity? And she said being over 50, hot flashes can cause issues.
I like that. That's so sweet. Okay, so with the hot flashes, I can't recommend you what to do there, but what I can say to you is with product, I don't know if you use Davina's product, but if you do, there's certain products that for curly hair are really good. So, for example, you could use the Love Curl, you could use the Oil and Oil, you could use the Volume Mousse, you could use the curl serum, you could use Love Smooth and Twist It, you could use just oil. So you could use a selection of products. It depends on how strong your texture is, how dense your hair is. It depends on how wiry or coarse the hair is. If you need something a bit more coarser, if your hair is quite coarse, then what you could do is you could use something a bit more, something that gives you a bit more hold. So maybe like a mousse would be a good thing to use, or you could use something which gives you a bit more of a kind of stickiness to it, like for example the curl building serum. That's a bit creamy and gives a bit more hold to the hair. Whereas if your hair is quite soft and quite floaty, you could use oil and just literally use oil and let it be quite like an angelic soft curl. Just carving out this corner here on the face, okay? And what I might do, if you zoom out, oh yeah, thank you. What you could do is I could carve a little shape around the front of the face. Let me have a look. I'm going to go down. And I'm going to keep that length there, so I get this little corner of length. That's quite cute, I like that. I'm not going to say the word good. It's good. It's working. It's a reassurance trick that I use in my mind to give me justification that my choices are correct. You know what we could do? Alex, do me a favour, will you get me a selection of curl products to describe? So again, I'm coming to the finishing touches of my haircut now. Okay, my shape's working. I'm liking the way the fringe is quite soft. Coming behind me, Michelle, so you can see my shape. I'm loving the fact that I've got this kind of soft, kind of croppy, choppy fringe. That's quite cute, I like that. I like the fact that I've got my length kind of moving around the shape, and I've got this kind of bobby finish to it, which I quite like. I love the fact that it's slightly lighter on top colour-wise. Now I'm just going to go through the shape and I'm going to soften everything so it all moves quite soft. So I'm going to take diagonal sections and comb the hair out, and I'm gently just going to point all of the lengths just so that when I move the haircut, it will kind of integrate and becomes alive. Michelle, if you come in, so I'm going to move me.
Wicked.
So again, just pick the hair up, comb the hair out, and just soften it all through. Yeah.
Johnny, there's a question from Janny.
From Jenny?
Janny, Jani.
Cool, hi Jenny.
And she said, "Hi Johnny, could you please explain again what you exactly mean by a round, square, triangular cutting line? It is different than the round, square, triangle shape. My English is good, but sometimes I get confused."
Okay, so basically, when you cut hair, what you're doing is you're using your fundamental techniques, i.e. your cutting line, your elevation, and your over direction to create the shape. But you need to understand what shape you're creating before you start using all your techniques. A round the shape tends to hug the head. A triangular shape tends to have areas where there's potentially 3 corners, or one very, very predominant corner, or one very, very predominant area of length. Whereas a square shape tends to have potentially 4 corners. Those 4 corners can obviously be quite heavy and can sit in a specific way. So I tend to prefer slightly more triangular shapes and slightly more rounder shapes to square shapes, because they don't always look that nice. That being said, a square line can be quite nice. So this is obviously a square line. I'm just going to come, I might take a little bit more of that hairline away. Yeah, I'm just going to hold that. Just take away a little bit more of this length. So think of it as fundamental primary shapes. So a squarer shape tends to be a lot more of a solid shape, doesn't move as much, okay? Whereas triangular shapes can tend to kind of float into one specific direction, and squarer shapes can tend to sit very compact and not really have a lot of movement to them. So, for example, in this haircut, I've chosen a lot of round cutting lines, round shapes, so it hugs the head, and so the hair moves. Shall I come around this way a bit? And I'll move around this way. I'll keep painting you, so I keep using my mirror, so I keep working away from you, so I do apologise. So, Jenny, try and think of it like this. You've got 3 primary shapes, circle, square and triangle. That's what everyone kind of focuses on. Once you understand your primary shapes, then you have to understand what techniques you need to use to create those primary shapes. So for example, you've got your cutting line, your elevation and your over direction. These are the things that actually create the shapes. And then obviously you have the end results, which basically tends to be a slightly fuller shape or a slightly flatter shape. You've got kind of obviously haircuts that are slightly more layered and slightly more graduated, or haircuts that have a complete combination of all of the different principles that give you the end results.
It was, I think it's pronounced Johnny, and it's from Devon, it's in the Netherlands.
Okay,
He corrected me. He said that she is a he. So my bad.
Can't get help nowadays, you know what I mean?
Just like pictures. I don't know. It's hard to tell. It's so small.
Okay. So I hope that answers your question. Can I get a towel or some cotton wool tissue? Okay, I'm coming to the end of my haircut now. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the haircut for you quickly, for you to be able to see the shape. I'm also going to use some oil in the haircut to soften the shape through. Go through the top. Again, just lifting the hair up and just softening. I don't want there to be too much of a solid shape through this disconnection. In fact, what I could do, let me show you what else I could do. I'm going to slice through the hair to make it lighter. So I come across the shape, palm the hair forward, let the hair sit, and then just gently, barely open and close the knuckle of your blade. And all it'll do is just thin it out a little bit. I'm trying to avoid cutting the short hair underneath. So I'm using the knuckle of the blade and just gliding the hair through very gently. I'm not going too aggressively because I don't want to make big holes in my shape. And again, go with the grain, sorry. So if the hair's going down this way, you go down it. And just comb the hair through, and that will just slightly thin the hair out and soften my lengths. And I'll continue doing that all the way through. Good. I said good, I know I did. The guy's going to tease me now for that again. That'll be Jonathan and Ped and Kate, they'll probably message me after going, good, was it good, yeah? Was it good, yeah?
Got a couple of those messages.
Yeah, it's probably from Jonathan or Ped. They're the two that like to take the mickey out of me. Okay, any more questions, Michelle? I'm coming to the end of my haircut.
There's a few questions about products.
Okay, so, go on.
Okay, so Mandy asked again if she goes, what would you recommend in terms of styling?
Mm-hmm.
Because she has a long fringe and she wants to dress it up in a variety of ways.
Okay.
And she said that it's naturally curly.
Okay, so ideally, if you're going to scrunch it to obviously get it full and bouncy, like a quiffy type shape, you want to set the curl. So I would probably use the volume mousse. I'd probably use oil and oil, and I'd scrunch the hair with my head upside down. Well, I wouldn't do it to my head because I haven't got any hair. That's what I would do with your hair. You could use an area of cream, so you could use, for example, can you zoom in here, Michelle? Let me film.
Of course.
Scan. Thank you, Alex. So these are the products that we tend to use, okay, on curly hair. So these tend to be moisturising, highly moisturising, and will give you a softer curl, a softer, looser curl. These will tend to give you a bit of a more of a creamy based curl. Same as, for example, these two here. Okay. This tends to give you more of a kind of beachy, sea salty type finish on the hair, very loose. This again could be an oil, so this can sit over here actually. This is more of a slightly thicker oil. Okay. Then obviously you've got some gel which you could use, which you've got quite crispy and quite hard. Okay. Then obviously you've got the curl mousse and the volumizing mousse. I tend to use this a lot more than this one. The volume mousse tend to use because it's softer, whereas the curl mousse can be quite solid in the haircut. Okay. So, I've finished my haircut. I love the fact that I've got these kind of looser areas of hair that break through, and you've got the shorter hair that breaks through the shape. I'm going to let the haircut do the work. So, Michelle, if you don't mind standing over there for me, darling. quite loosely. I don't like it when hairstyles are kind of fixed. I like it when the haircuts just do all the work. So I don't really want to spend a lot of time styling this. I just want to loosely move the hair around and let the haircut do all the work. I've obviously got my areas, my focal point areas. So I want all the shorter hair to poke through the haircut. I hope the guys like it. It's been a really good change. Obviously, for those of you who are joining in now, initially the hair was like down here somewhere. So we've gone for quite a big change. So if I wanted to style it specifically, I'd probably wear it more to this side. So you can see the shorter scruffier haircut with this kind of solid line to it. Okay, let me get one of the guys to de-hair while I quickly draw it. Before I draw it, let me describe to you how I cut it, okay? So I started my haircut through the fringe area. You can see my zone once I pick the hair up, okay? With a round, pivoting sections with a round cutting line, working on the base to the other corner of the recession, which is basically there. I'll obviously carve this out later on, okay? Then my layering came all the way through with a round cutting line on the base, all the way through to basically back there. Then what I did is I came through with rounded sections, slightly diagonal, graduating that hair through, keeping the weight there. Then I came through the back with a vertical section, triangular cutting line, and pulled everything to section 1. So my number system was 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, all the way back to here. Then on my vertical shape it was 1, 2 to 1, 3 to 2, 4 to 3, 5 to 4, so I built length and weight. And then I took vertical section, triangular cutting line, 2 to 1, 3 to 1, 4 to 1. So the plan is basically to build and support that weight on top of the ear. Then I put a rough line in, okay? I left the line till basically the majority of it, till it was dry. And I cut my line in. Show them here, around here a bit. And if you could zoom in on there or go closer, you would see it better.
It gets a little blurry when I go far away,
Does
so
it?
yeah.
Okay. Right,
on the other side.
Let me demo to you then.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Then through this area here, I took diagonal sections. And my initial cutting line was triangular, wasn't it? So basically I came around like this, and then the shape slowly became more rounder. So I elevated the hair, so 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and I came right up into my shape with a round cutting line. Okay. Then what I did is I then came through from the front by taking a diagonal section, mirroring the hairline. Okay. And then what I did is I basically worked pivoting sections till I was vertical, and then I connected it into my length in the back. So in effect, my shape, if I just comb the hair properly, if I comb it down, you can really see my shape. It all kind of blends itself in. Then I have an area of length for the top, which basically was cut using everything, putting it to the previous section. So I gradually get a little bit longer with each section with a square cutting line. And I love the fact that it just gives me this looseness on the top. You know, I can tuck it, I can play with it, I can move it around. And I can make it look quite classic if I want. Yeah, with a cool little choppy fringe. Yeah, obviously I carved out the fringe area to give me more of a sharper opening up the face. I like the fact that this is quite bitty. I like the fact that it's quite raw on the edge. I've again carved that little corner out this side as well, and I kept a little bit of an edge to that point there. And then I've cut a beautiful little line into it, which is slightly asymmetric in the back. And I like the fact that it's got this looseness on the top, which every time I move it, it will feel slightly differently. My shape will always have this kind of sense of freedom to it. I don't like it over-styled. I don't think it needs it. It's got this kind of drop where my line sits in. Good. Right, if you don't mind deharing for me, Alex, more, if you come over here, Michelle. Let me try and draw this because this is a bit of a monster to draw, but I'll do my best. Okay, in the time frame we've got. Okay, where did we start? We had a zone which was a side parting, which came down and across like that. Then my sections basically came vertically down. Do me a favour, would you get me the other pens because these are way too thick. Yep. Perfect, thank you. And the red one that's up there. Let me start again because this pen's way too thick. It's not very nice.
Use this side.
Thank you. Careful. Alright, let me do this again. Okay, that's better. So, we came down, then we came across like this. Our sections basically pivoted like this, and then moved round like this. Remembering that I dropped a lot of this length out. Okay, my cutting line. Michelle, do me a favour, would you get this, the green pen and the red pen out for me?
On
my
the
cutting
skinny
line,
side. Skinny.
the skinny side. These are great pens because you've got the fat side and the skinny sides. This basically sat down into like a soft little kind of fringe that sat around there-ish. And then we carved this area here out, which then ended up dropping into bobby type length. Like that. Okay. Then my zone moved, let me come around here, came around and down the centre back, okay, and my sectioning from the top was basically coming around like so, and then when it got to here I stopped, and then after I came through the back like this, and then I took vertical sections. So in effect, if you try and imagine it, I don't really want to draw the zones in, but I will, just to make it easier for you to understand. This was one of the zones.
So I'm trying to get a shot of it.
You get a reflection. Why don't you come on this side?
Yeah. I get a reflection if I go too high, so I'm trying to.
So I came down, like so. And everything got pulled over here. Don't forget, I also graduated it, but I can't show everything on the same diagram. It'll get very, very messy. So I'll show the bulk of it, the bit that had the most impact. And then I cut a line that went up and round like that. That's what the exterior shape did. Okay. This hair here, I worked it on the base, and my number system was working around like so. I worked from the back to the front. Normally we wouldn't show internal over direction if you're working on the base. I'm just showing you the movement of the guide. And from here, my sections came across diagonally like so. And they worked up the haircut. And then this connection from here came round like that, and it arced like that. So I continued working like so, and then I came from the front back, like so. So if I zoom into this diagram here, so this is obviously my line side. So I had an area of disconnection that went around the top, like this, and across. I basically pivoted. If they've got any questions, get them to feel free to ask me now or forever hold their peace. This is going to drop. This was my other zone, so that was my majority of my line and my internal graduation and layering. Can everyone see okay? Hopefully you can. Then my sections came down like this. My method of working was like so. And in this area here, I cut, this was my fringe area. And it carved around and then dropped into a beautiful line. Okay, my cutting line here was round into slight exaggeration. Give me 1 second. So it was slightly triangular around the bottom, wasn't it? So obviously when the initial cutting line, it went round, and then it became slightly more triangular down the bottom to maintain an element of weight and length. Okay, don't forget when my outline goes in, it cuts a lot of that off. For the top area, obviously we had this zone of disconnection. And then we had the other zone, which you can't really see that most of it. We worked across the top, pulling everything to the previous. So everything went to the previous. Got slightly longer. And my sectioning around the front pivoted like that. Okay, through the top, this was my shape. Everything to the previous. Here, everything to the previous. Okay. And then here, everything came around this way. Bear with me, guys. I'm trying to get through this as quickly as I possibly can. For those of you who love drawings and love the idea of understanding how the haircut was cut, this is a very, very vital part of the process. Diagonal sections, which then pivot into vertical and connect itself through. This was diagonal sections that basically met the shape up. My exterior outline, I carved it round and then down and then kept a little bit of a corner, and then it drops round like that. The fringe then drops down. Okay. Method of working was working backwards, like so. And then everything was to the previous, like so. My expanded shape basically did this. It got slightly longer, but then it rounded itself off. Okay, the top sectioning came across like this. And my shape, if I start here, got slightly longer. This is how the hair was pulled out from the head. Okay, my horizontal shape in this scenario, if we're talking about the short hair, moved around like so. My shape through the back was quite complicated to draw, so I'll keep that simple. Okay, this was obviously here, this was a round shape. This was actually a cutting line, so I could draw that solid. Like so. Okay, this was also round through here, like so, and this area of length was actually quite square, wasn't it? Do you remember? So we worked this quite square. Guys, I don't know how many of you watch this every single week, but this is such an important part to the process. It's something that everybody that we come into contact with, we try and share, because it's so important in regards to documenting your work, whether you're on a 2-day course or whether you're one of our team. It's a really, really fundamental part. Okay, I'm going to stop it there. So, thank you. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the haircut. I hope you've enjoyed the feeling of the haircut. It's very, very creative look, very different. If you come over here, let's have a quick show. So you can see she's got this beautiful little kind of movement to her hair. It's nice bit of freedom. I like it when it's more natural. I like it when it's kind of understyled. I don't like it too neat. Yeah, you've still got obviously that beautiful little line that runs through the haircut. But then you've got obviously all this freedom and movement inside. How the hair sits and flows. Thanks to my beautiful model for letting me cut her hair off, and I will see you guys next week for our next look. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day.